people, and it's Tuesday, which normally means we're launching a new video podcast right here on YouTube. However, this week we're not. And we are releasing the audio version over on our Podbean site or anywhere you get an audio podcast. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of those locations that you normally get it, you can get it there. Google Play, all of those locations. But we don't have a video on this week. And that's because with our COVID numbers in Tennessee up the way they are, Curtis and I have decided to keep our circles a little bit smaller. And so in doing that, we've kind of scrapped the video option, but we did record an audio one from distance. So him from his house and mine from my house. And we did launch that. So please go check it out. It's this week talking about chapter 5 of the Why We're Polarized book by Ezra Klein. It's a good discussion. We talk about demographics, and so we get into it, the changing demographics of our country and of our political parties, and whether we should be apathetic to that, whether we should hate that, whether we should embrace that. We talk about all those things this week. But we did want to share with you a little bit of video this week because we have a patron site where people do support us financially, and we thank you guys who do that. And part of the package of what we do with that is we have discussions with them. And so we had our first Zoom discussion about 2 weeks ago now, week and a half ago, something like that. And so we wanted to share a little bit about that just so you could see kind of what it is. Our buddy Chris, who's a patron, was a part of that discussion. And he brought up the idea that at that week during our normal podcast, our Be Good People podcast, we were talking about how we're polarized in our political parties. However, we weren't always that way. We talked about the golden era of politics. And so he brought up the idea that if John F. Kennedy today was running for political office, would he not be considered a conservative and therefore a Republican on a lot of issues? And so why don't you jump in the conversation with us there? And then after that, head on over to our Podbean site or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pick up this week's where we're talking about demographics in our political parties and across our country. Thanks so much for joining us. We are lucky to have you as support, and we're lucky to have you in the conversation. So make sure you join with us.
So the other polarizing thing I had queued up that I'm interested in what the reaction to it is I found an interesting article that was carried by BuzzFeed. Not that they're the best source for news, but it's an interesting article that discusses politics, and it's actually a thought that I actually agree with and resonates. And that's if Kennedy were alive today, he'd be a conservative. And it's got some reasons, and a couple of them are he cut taxes. Some of them are, we'll say, I don't agree with some of them. He favored free trade. He was really anti-communist. He invaded Cuba and then blockaded Cuba. He did not spend a lot of money except for on space and defense. He escalated American involvement in the Vietnam War. Despite his shortcomings, I think, as an individual, there's a lot of rumor out there about adultery and stuff like that. Without talking about any of that, he was his Catholic faith was a big part of who he was.
He was a Catholic. Is this that 21 Reasons Kennedy?
That's what I'm flipping through right now. He appointed one of the two justices that dissented Roe versus Wade. He was not a fan of abortion.
So it's interesting with the communism. I was taking this, it was kind of popular on some of the YouTube videos I watch. People are taking these political quizzes. It's like, where are you on the spectrum? But what was interesting is they have, it's almost like a cross section. So it's not just left or right. Like on the economic scale, you can be left or right. But then there's also an authoritarian versus libertarian scale too. So I tend to be more libertarian, and like Stalin, and when you think of communism, you think of Mao, and you think of Vietnam and Cuba, Castro, and they were all more or ended up being more authoritarian, which, you know, it puts them right in line with Hitler. I think no matter what your economics are. If you're authoritarian, then you're going to be, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're going to be on the wrong side of history in that sense. When you're shutting up speeches.
It's not a true single plane.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. But I would even say, like, we even talked about it, you know, with the golden era of politics.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say? We say that he was a Democrat, but we don't necessarily say he was liberal. You know,
who's that?
Kennedy. He could have. He could have been a conservative Democrat and sat very, very well in the Democratic Party at the time when he was operating. I mean, that's not. We are so polarized now in our parties that you have to be a conservative. Not, you know, and actually, I feel like in the 80s and 90s when my dad was voting Republican, you know what I mean, and holding up those tenets and stuff, I think there was a difference even then in Republicans between, like, we call them values conservatives and then fiscal conservatives, you know what I mean? And I think you see that, especially through the Reagan era, but like you see there's values conservatives, we just call them evangelical Christians now, but then you have fiscal conservatives and they don't necessarily agree on things.
No.
But right now, it's like everybody agrees to be in the same basket, no matter what. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but let's agree, like, to that example and to that point, Trump's not fiscally conservative.
No.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed the discussion here, and if you did, go ahead and click that like button. That helps us out. Also, if you're not a subscriber, you should be. If you subscribe and hit the bell, then you get a notification every time we post new content. That way you can stay up on all the discussions we're having. If this conversation resonated with you, maybe share it with a friend over on social media. And also, we've got some other videos, so feel free to check those out and join in anywhere.